Since the room suddenly went quiet, we may as well start. My name is Ned Nilsson. I'm an engineering professor. I'll be moderating. The whole idea of the panel discussion is not to have a choreographed program here, but give you students and parents, prospective students and parents, an opportunity to ask questions and of our alumni and our current students. And I know the alumni won't be intimidated, but I hope the students aren't intimidated by us standing here when they answer, but I think not. So first of all, I'd like to start out by having each member of the panel introduce themselves. Alumni, tell us when you graduated, and students, your class standing, and tell us your concentration and a little bit about yourself, okay? Tim, you want to start?
Sure. So I'm Tim Lewin, and I am an alum. I graduated in 1995. I live in Atlanta. I'm actually here doing Fridays at Calvin with my daughter, who's sad to say is not interested in engineering. But anyway, but I graduated from 95. I moved to Atlanta to go to graduate school at Georgia Institute of Technology. I'm actually a professor there at Georgia Tech. I've been a faculty member there for the last 20 years.
My name is Matt Fenema. I'm an alumni of 2004. My concentration was civil. I live here in West Michigan, and I'm part of our family's concrete construction firm. So I did do civil engineering for 4 years, and then wanted to bring something back to the family business. But definitely when you work in construction, you use your engineering mind a lot when it comes to that. So I'm glad to be here.
Hello, my name is Michael Bassetta. I'm a senior electrical and computer engineering student here, so I'll be graduating in May. I have particular interest in more applications engineering, so I'm hoping to get into focusing on autonomy in industry, wherever it be, I'm not sure yet. But.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nicole Mishmer-Heisen, and I graduated from Calvin in 2014 with a degree in chemical engineering. And while I was at Calvin, I also studied biochemistry, and I'm currently actually in graduate school for pharmacology at the University of Michigan. So in my PhD work now, I would say I'm more of a scientist than an engineer, but I definitely still use some of the ideas that came out of my engineering education really often. And my current work is mostly on cancer research. And another thing that I did while I was at Calvin is participated in athletics, so I was on both the cross-country and track teams while I was here. So if anyone has questions about extracurricular activities, we can try to answer those later.
Now, she's quite humble because you held quite a few titles, didn't you, Michelle? Yeah, see, she's embarrassed. I think she was national champion. Yes. Hey.
All right, I am Jeff DeHeer. I graduated in '97 with a degree in mechanical, and I have been doing mechanical engineering very happily, blissfully ever since, and love the field, love the school. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here and be able to share with you guys some of our wonderful things about this school.
Hello, my name is Brant Gates. I'm a junior chemical engineering student right now. At the moment, I'm interested in studying pharmaceuticals and going into the field of medicine. And I'm from McHenry, Illinois.
All right, and my name is Noah Verbeek. I am a junior mechanical engineering student, and ideally, I'm hoping to go to graduate school and do research into how to use engineering for international development and to help developing nations progress with new technologies. So.
Okay, so with that, we'd like to throw it open to anyone in the audience who would like to propose a question. Any kind of a question? Here's one.
Just to the students, so what was your big, coming out of high school, what was the big adjustment getting into college?
Okay, I'm going to repeat the question so everybody can hear him. He's asking the students, what was your big adjustment in coming out of high school and starting college?
I would say the biggest adjustment for me was just realizing that I'm on my own now and that my parents aren't going to be there to tell me to wake up, go to class, get everything done. So just like making my own schedule and like being in charge of my own education and my life was just the biggest transition for me going into college.
I think for me it was very similar, and in a sense of workload. So the idea that I am living at school now, which is a bit of a change from high school where you leave school and you go home and you have a bit of homework, but you're actually living at school, which is great because it means your professors are there too and you can go to them with questions anytime you need it. But it also means that you have to be much more on top of your time and understanding what it is you have to get done and when you need to do it, and that was a bit of an adjustment.
Yeah, I would definitely agree as well. I'm from Northeast Ohio, so coming out here, I have no family in this area. I'm on my own, living in a house with some other guys, so I have to not only manage finances, but manage workload and be able to kind of jump into that role of being an adult. A lot of when it came to the workload, it wasn't necessarily my first couple years that really I had to really manage my time well, make sure I was on top of things, but definitely when it came to junior and senior year, being able to manage time, that became a huge thing because you will be swamped and there's a lot of work that goes along with that.
Okay, another question? Back here?
So what's your favorite thing about Calvin?
Okay, what's the favorite thing about Calvin? Alumni or students or anyone?
My favorite thing about Calvin would definitely be all the people here. Just so many friendly people. I've already made friendships that I know are going to last a long time. And yeah, I love everybody here. And yeah, I'd say the people for me.
I would say for me, it's in hindsight. I didn't appreciate this when I was a student here. But in hindsight, it is the opportunity to, in the engineering field, not only get into the technical side, the physics, the math, the union of both of those things and applying it to real world issues, but the coupling of that then with your literature and your history and your core stuff that we all, at least I, groaned and moaned about having to do. But in hindsight, being pushed to do those things and kind of completing that picture of what it means to be an engineer and a Christian engineer in the world, for me was one of the strengths that I think is maybe unique here, or at least is certainly rare.
Yeah, I can add to that. I'd say, a question I get asked as a faculty member at Georgia Tech, which is a, very large engineering program, which is, how would your own kids, would you send them to Calvin or would you send them to Georgia Tech? And it's a tough question because I really like both places. But again, I would just say just the complete integrated Christian understanding of what it means to be to have a Christian world and life view, which is integrated fully in everything you do, is absolutely a wonderful thing about Calvin. Our Christian faith is not just another thing that we do; it is who we are, and it defines who we are completely and fully. And I'd say I went to Christian education K through 12, but it wasn't really until I was at Calvin that I really appreciated that. And I have since, now I'm in a public university, and I love being there, but I also would say that's what I really appreciate about Calvin.
I'd have to say the faculty support was one of the favorite things I had with it. I transferred from my freshman year. I was at a different university and then transferred to sophomore year. I just had a lot of support from, Professor Brower, who was not here because he's got class, but many other faculty members that they have no problem taking you under their wings and then allowing, or answering questions, being there when you need them, that open doors that, allow you to not just feel like you're alone in some of the problems you have when you get in not just the engineering life, but real life. So I say it's the quality of the faculty here, which then goes back to what you said with Tim, with the Christian faith. They act out their faith as a professor. So it's not just, they're not just teaching you the engineering world. They're teaching you to be a Christian engineer. So.
Anyone else?
And I met my wife here.
I would echo the comments about the faculty here. I have a lot of favorite parts about Calvin. The people are probably what I would say, same as you, but yeah, being at Michigan and seeing kind of the atmosphere there and these huge classes of hundreds of students and those being directed by faculty, but then those faculty not really interacting with the students. It's graduate student instructors, or it's a very different sort of atmosphere, and one isn't right or wrong, but I really appreciated how I could just go to the office of the faculty, and they usually had a very open door and were willing to help you if you needed it, or talk about other things besides just academic stuff.
I think we had 165 engineering freshmen this year, and we divided that into 6 sections of Engineering 101. So each section had less than 30. So by the end of the second week, the prof knows every student's name, which means you can't cut, kids, because we know. Next question.
I had one about the life work. Wondered if either of the students were involved in that, the life work scholarship.
Okay, question about life work and the life work scholarship.
And who do you meet with monthly? Is it a professor, a mentor from outside?
Yeah, I think that's a tough question for us because the program started this year, and it's only applicable to freshmen. So none of these people are involved in it. And exactly once a month, there's an online thing. I'm sorry, I really can't answer that. Yeah, our chair doesn't either, so. Yeah, it's a brand new program. So, pardon? Yeah, we can get somebody. So. Okay, students who did internships, how easy was it for you to get an internship, and how and where?
So I've done an internship every summer since I started at Calvin. The first internship was at a company called Extol that we actually just visited about a week and a half ago with a bunch of junior engineering students and gave a bunch of resumes to a contact that we had at this company, and they're probably going to hire 1 or 2 interns. And then, so there are a lot of opportunities like that if you want to go out and seek an internship yourself. There's also, probably right here, there is a engineering career fair. That's a lot of companies come and are looking for interns, and a lot of people get hired out of that. Last summer, I actually had a research internship here at Calvin, working with Professor Wonder, who was here. I think he might have left, doing research into chlorination methods. So we went down to Ecuador with a team of 10 of us, 7 students and 3 professors, and did some research down there, and then continued that research here at Calvin. So there's a lot of opportunities. I'm also connected to the University of Michigan through a professor that came to speak at a seminar here, and looking at getting an internship there next summer. So there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. There's definitely a lot of opportunity to find internships, especially within the Michigan area. I know Professor Nielsen works extremely hard to work with all the students individually, make sure that they find the internship that they're looking for, the area that they're looking for. I personally wasn't looking in the Michigan area, but somehow ended up in the Michigan area to work. I worked out of Kalamazoo for a company called Eaton, a larger company, but I was looking outside. So I will say, when you're trying to look for maybe if you're from California or wherever you're trying to find something out there, it is a little more difficult for Calvin to help you because there aren't as many connections. But overall, there are amazing connections, especially with, like you said, research or just finding internships within Michigan.
I'd say another great thing about Calvin's internship program is the connections in other parts of the world. For example, Professor Nielsen actually connected me with a company out in Germany for next summer. So just being able to get out of North America and experience different cultures and work on engineering at the same time is just an awesome opportunity that Calvin offers.
Okay, any other?
Let me just add one thing to that real quickly. I'm not a current student, but regarding the internships, I think it's important also for students in particular to keep in mind that internships are a phenomenal opportunity to figure out what you don't want to do, too. It's 3 months, right? It's a short time. You can get in there, you can learn, you can find, hey, I don't want to be in the automotive world, or man, I really do. And so it gives you that opportunity. So as an engineer who hires those folks, I strongly encourage you students to get out there, try it. Even if it's something maybe outside of what you're thinking you might like, you might find out you do.
Yeah, I can second that. I placed a female student with the City of Wyoming a few years ago, civil, and she came back in September, and she came to my office. She said, Professor Nielsen, I hate that. I don't want to do that the rest of my life. I said, well, you found out before you spent 4 years and got a degree in something you hate. And she switched out of engineering altogether, but I noticed a year later, she was editor of Chimes. Now, that's a big deal here at Calvin. If you're editor of Chimes, you're recommended by the English department and approved by the faculty. So she got into something she enjoyed and liked and excelled. And that's really wonderful, I think. Okay? Okay, she's not an engineer, but okay.
I was just curious, in the Department of Engineering, what's the ratio of male to female students?
She's asking the ratio of male to female students. I'll let our chair answer that one.
We're currently about 15% female overall. Our entering class was a little over 20% female this fall. And it's slightly stronger female participation in chemical and civil environmental than it is in mechanical and electrical.
Well, she's saying 15% overall. It was 20, but it dropped
Well, it is 20% for our entering freshmen.
for entering freshmen. Okay, and it's 15 are upperclassmen. And chemical and which ones?
Chemical and civil environmental.
And civil environmental are the highest. So,
I can benchmark that with the national average too, which is about 15% for mechanical, civil, and electrical. Biomedical is about 50%, and I think chemicals around 40%. So it sounds like the numbers are pretty comparable.
another question?
This is kind of specific, but what was it like difficulty-wise managing being an engineering major and also running cross-country?
Okay, what was it like being an engineering major and running cross-country?
I'm not going to say that it wasn't hard to manage my time and that it wasn't a lot to take on, but I definitely knew that I wanted to do both of those things. And so I was able to make a commitment to both my team and my academics that worked out. And I was really thankful that I had such a close relationship with the faculty so that they would realize when I wasn't there and help me if I had to miss a class for a meet or something like that. Yeah, so it was good.
You know, a few years ago, we had a senior who was a star center on the basketball team. And so he was in senior design. So I met with his team and I said, hey, during basketball season, he's not going to pull his weight. So the rest of you have to kick it in and carry for him. And when the season's over, he's got to make it up. And that's what happened. And you know, that's life. Your parents work in industry, and that's how it works, isn't it? You're a team, and sometimes one member can't do or has a down or whatever. The rest of you kick in and help. And so in senior design, I think the students learn a lot more than just engineering. Okay, they learn a lot about life. Another question?
For those of you who have involvement in a diploma faculty type of school, say in Michigan or Illinois or something like that, what is one thing about Calvin that puts Calvin over the top of a bigger program like that, other than faculty? But I mean, in terms of like experiences, contacts, any of that.
Okay, the question is, he's asking those of them who had a little experience with a bigger university, if they could compare the bigger university with Calvin and maybe some of the advantages of Calvin.
One thing that I decided to come to Calvin was the opportunities, not only internships and finding jobs, but also international relations. I had the opportunity to go to Germany and study abroad for five weeks, 6 weeks, just about. And it was an incredible opportunity, not only to meet the people there, learn the culture, but also study at a technical university in Germany. It was a great opportunity, and I definitely recommend it for anyone else.
Anybody else?
I think one other benefit of being at Calvin, this kind of goes back to, it's not completely separate from the issue of relationships with faculty, but since there's no graduate students at Calvin, the faculty, when they do research, it's only with the undergraduates, and at a school like Michigan, the graduate students are taking over most of the research just because that's what they're supposed to do. And then as an undergraduate, you would be probably matched with a graduate student versus with an actual faculty member. And so for me, that was a big adjustment going to Michigan, because I had been doing research in the biochemistry department and working very closely with one of the professors there. And now now I'm also working for a professor, but I'm also interacting with postdocs and a lot of other graduate students, and the faculty just are, I don't know, that's the biggest thing that stands out for me, is just you can have these close relationships with the faculty is really important.
I think too, it is on more of a personal level. So I went to undergraduate here. I went to graduate school a little bit south of here in Kalamazoo. And I think in undergraduate here, your social network is broader than just engineering or engineering students. And I think from a personal point of view, from a personal growth and development point of view, that's good. We engineers, we can get a little inside of ourselves, and we can get a little bit closed off, and getting with some people who maybe are more social, maybe who can look other people in the eye when they actually talk to them. Those sorts of things can grow you and can do you well. So I think that's something that Calvin, and in places like Calvin too, that's not something I think that's unique here. But I think too, from a size point of view, it is something that stands out.
Yeah, and I'd say, just to add to a few points that were made earlier, I mean, the biggest difference between, I think we also need to talk about public versus private here, but, a large public school, the freshman, sophomore classes will be quite large. But that's not to say, I think that suitably motivated students can find good access to the people that they need help. I think if I compare my experience at Calvin and Georgia Tech, I think the faculty were similarly motivated and cared about students. It was just a matter of overall amount of bandwidth that you have. And so I think, but probably what doesn't happen at Calvin, what can happen at big students, is students fall through the cracks because you just don't have time or the ability to know who's not coming to class. And then I guess but the biggest difference I think is probably in the the kind of the freshman to sophomore, junior type year. As you start looking towards junior, senior year, even at larger schools, the classes are getting smaller. You're getting a lot more face time with the faculty. And again, for students who want to meet with faculty, generally the faculty want to meet with you. You know, they'll make the time. And I think, so I'll just go back to the point that I made earlier, is that the thing that you'll get at Calvin is a comprehensive world and light view of what it means to be a Christian.
I have another thing to add that I just thought of. I initially came to Calvin wanting to go mechanical because of prior experiences working on cars and lawnmower equipment, etc. But the one thing I like about Calvin is the fact that your first 2 years, you take a variety of engineering courses. So it could be mechanical, could be more civil-based, electrical-based, chemical-based, whatever. You take a variety of that. And because of that, I had the opportunity to take a few electrical courses, and doing that, it sparked my interest incredibly. And so I completely changed majors. I went from going mechanical towards electrical because I had that opportunity, even though I was already 2 years in. So that's one opportunity for those who are uncertain about what concentration they want to go into. That's one thing with Calvin, because most typical schools you'll be thrown straight into the mechanical program or thrown straight into electrical program. This one's different because you see all aspects of each concentration, and then you can then decide which one you want to go into.
Now, you're still planning to graduate in 4 years, right?
Yeah.
I said planning. Question way in the back.
What's the percentage of success of your graduates who come in your freshman year? I mean, how many actually make it out the door as an engineer? 80%?
Yeah, I can actually give you those numbers. Yeah, the question is, what percentage of the students who come in as freshmen wind up graduating and going out the door? Right now, 85% approximately of the students who start engineering at Calvin graduate from Calvin. The overall percentage for the college is 78.5% right now. It's a little higher because students who start engineering have higher ACTs. Okay, of the students who start engineering at Calvin, right now about 60% are graduating with a degree in engineering. That's actually up. We were 50% for quite a few years. In the last 2 or 3 years, it's been 60%. For instance, we had 102 seniors last year out of 150. And of the students who graduate from Calvin with a degree in engineering, 85% are doing it in 4 years. Okay, and then the ones that don't do it in 4 years, as our chair mentioned, they stub their toe on a course, or maybe they're getting a second major or minor, or sometimes they transfer it in, and which then they have difficulty graduating in 4 years. But 60% in 4 years is a very, very high number. You ask other colleges, that's very high. And as our chair mentioned this morning, that's because Calvin goes, well, every student who needs a course gets that course. You never have to stay another year because you couldn't get the course you needed. So, I think we had a question here. How has being at Calvin helped you grow in your faith?
I'd say it's for sure strengthened my faith. I mean, I grew up in the K-12 school around here. That was a Christian school, and you kind of go through the motions at times. But here, being around my point before, the staff and how they, live their faith as your teacher, and then also how the classes will challenge you with it as well, because it's not just the Christian worldview in here. It's a broad spectrum of teaching that you look at and you say, okay, well, that's how the world sees us, but how should we live, right? Live in the world, but not of the world type perspective. So you definitely learn those lessons through being here at Calvin.
I think too, you learn that being an engineer and being a Christian do not have to be very separate things. And you understand that your Christian faith, your Christian walk, whether you're public about it or it's more of a private one, infiltrates everything that you do. When you're solving that problem, when you're looking at that equation and you're scratching your head saying, what the heck is this thing, right? And you're trying to do whatever the work before you is. That Christian faith plays through all of that, and it's something that I find difficult to put into words, but Calvin and the professors, and then subsequently just the foundation that it builds, I think helps you ground yourself, ground your work in faith. And I think that's a very, very key thing as a Christian in industry in particular, where things can get very ugly very quickly.
One thing I will add to that is the thing that I love about this, or the school in general, is that, and the professors themselves, is almost every class period you start off with prayer and a devotion. And that's huge, just right off the bat. I mean, you may have non-Christians here that get that message, first of all. But they also offer, every morning there's chapel services. We have services offered mornings and evenings, Sundays as well. So overall, there's a great opportunity to hear God's word and hear the message of people, and allow professors to really speak to the students.
I think along with that too, one thing that I really appreciate is that there's a huge variety in the way that different people and different professors express their faith. So pretty much every class has a devotional, but the way that each professor does their devotional and involves faith into their classes is very different. And so you get to see that across your classes, both in engineering classes and in non-engineering classes, and see the way that different people are living out their faiths. And at the same time, chapel, which I think Michael brought up, is every morning and every day of the week is a different style of chapel. So it'll be international worship, or prayer, or theater, or just a worship session. And so you can go and experience those different ways of expressing your faith and see those every day in your classes, and I think that's really, really useful.
What else? Another question?
So as a student, what does your average day or week schedule look like?
Okay, as a student, what is your average week or day schedule? I also had a parent ask me, and maybe the students can answer this, for every hour of classwork, how many hours do you actually study? Oh, come on, you got to answer now.
So my schedule consists of class from 8 to around 1:30, and then depending on if you're an athlete or not, you'll have practice from like 3 to 6. My freshman year, I played baseball, and then a typical night consists of around 2 to 3 hours of homework. So if you're taking 4 classes, I'd say I spend around 45 minutes per class on average.
I think my schedule is very similar to that. And junior and senior year versus freshman, sophomore year, that changes a bit. Freshman, sophomore year, I think you end up staying up a lot later working on that homework, 1 or 2 in the morning. Not recommendable, but it happens. But now my schedule is pretty much the same. I start at 8 a.m., I go through 1:30, generally have breaks in between those, an hour or 2, and you work on homework. You find some people that are working on homework for the same class that you're working on, and you work through problems together. And then whatever's left, you go home and you work on that. And it varies a lot from class to class. So some classes have a really heavy workload. There's a thermodynamics class that everybody takes and everyone knows is rough. And so there are certain classes that you're going to spend more time, 1 or 2 hours for every hour of class. And there's other ones that, I can get this done in half an hour for every hour of class. So it depends a lot on what your schedule is and what classes you're taking.
Yeah, it can vary quite a bit. There'll be the times where I mean, you may have to put a couple hours in for each class, and then there'll be times like the time right now where I'm at, where projects are closing up and you're getting 20 hours of sleep over 4 nights. So it's really dependent upon your time management, how much you want to put into it, how early. You'll have those basic weekly homeworks that you got to take care of, and then research papers or projects. And if you don't focus on those at certain times, it'll add up quickly. You really have to manage your time well, especially when it comes to senior year. A lot of my friends and I joke, like if we went back to freshman, sophomore year, how easy it would be now going through junior year and part of senior year. But you just have to manage your time well.
Another question?
How does the increased workload from being an engineer and an engineering student affect your ability to do other activities on campus, like play sport, for instance, or do 15 clubs or whatever you want to do, just for example?
Okay, how does the increased workload for engineering affect other things that you want to do on campus?
I think that the workload for engineering kind of requires you to pick what you're going to focus on in terms of your other extracurricular activities. So maybe instead of being involved in 5 different clubs, you pick 1 or 2 activities that you're most interested in, and then devote wholeheartedly to those 1 or 2. If you were in a different major, you might be able to also do other activities, but I think that as an engineering student, because the classes can be pretty intensive, you need to just it's not impossible to do other activities, but you just have to be more selective about which ones you choose if you want to fully commit to them.
Another question? Okay, here's one. What's the difference between majoring and having a major and a minor? Dual majoring. Oh, dual majoring and a major and a minor? Well, I guess I can answer that. A major requires a certain number of courses. A minor requires 6 courses. A lot of our students get a minor in math because they're required to take 5 courses anyway. So 1 more course, they have a minor in math. But if you wanted to major in, let's say, electrical engineering and mechanical engineering, there's no way possible you can do that in 4 years. There's just too many courses. But we do have students who major in both chemistry and chemical engineering and do that in 4 years, right? And I see our chemical profs are nodding their head. Do they take a summer course along with that, or?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Okay.
With a little bit of AP credit, it's doable. The chemistry major is 2 additional classes beyond what you're
Okay, they're saying a chemistry major beyond chemical engineering is 2 additional classes, kind of like the math where you have to take 5 anyway. And if they have a little AP credit, they can do it in 4 years, otherwise take a summer course. But usually you can't major in 2 things that are too far apart. Not in 4 years. Okay. Any other questions?
You all talked about the support from the faculty. Can you talk a little bit about the support between the students?
Okay, support from the faculty they've talked about, but can they talk about support from fellow students?
Even though I'm 13 years out from Calvin, I can tell you that the support from the students that was great. I mean, I have lifelong friends that are all engineers because of the time at Calvin. Especially when you can group up in a dorm room or in one of the little common areas and try to go through Professor Nielsen's vector equations or something else. Or Professor DeRoy's statics.
Okay.
But anyways, it's one of those things where if you're able to, and at Kelvin, it's with how the closeness that you get with the other engineering students. It's kind of a team effort. The buddy system in there, you're able to go through and, well, I had a buddy who was a mechanical, I had a buddy who was an electrical, a buddy who was a chemical engineer on it. We're all in the same dorm room. We could sit down and go through and help each other get through a lot of the homework and help each other understand it outside of class very easily. So, you help each other out to make sure that everyone is successful through it. So.
I think also within the concentrations, especially when you get to your junior and senior year and you know if you're going to be chemical or electrical and you're taking these same classes with maybe 10 other people who are in most of your other classes, you really get to know them well and you end up being mixed together so that you're not always with the same people for different projects. And yeah, it's really cool to be able to kind of form that community with the other people in your concentration and help each other a lot.
We got time for probably 2 more questions. Question was, we've talked about internships, but about other jobs and other things in the area? Okay, a heavy workload or working other than internships? Have any of you worked during the school year? You want to speak to that?
So I'll go ahead and start. One from my personal experience and one from my youngest is currently a sophomore here. And so from my personal experience, I worked 10, 12 hours a week. My jobs were off-campus jobs. I was fortunate enough to have a car, so I could make that work. My youngest daughter is, like I said, currently a sophomore here, and she's in the biology department, despite my best efforts to get her into this field. She said no, but she's maybe biochem, she's not sure, but she's got a pretty hefty workload too. Actually, right now, she's cleaning dorms, and she does that for, I want to say 8, 10, 12 hours a week. The nice thing is that, if she has a heavy week, she can back off some. And the school is very good with allowing that to happen.
Yeah, I've worked every semester since my freshman year. Everything from being a tutor for the Spanish department to a lab assistant. I have a lot of friends who work in the dining halls, so there's a lot of opportunities for on-campus work, and a lot of it is work that can accentuate what you're already learning in your classes too. So being a grader for almost all of the engineering classes require graders, or a lab assistant for a physics class or some other lab that you'll take for one of your engineering classes. And there's all opportunities for that, and you get to work even closer with the professors and kind of dive a little deeper into a class that you already took, and that's a really great opportunity. And again, it's all about time management and figuring out, okay, how much can I actually do? How many hours can I work and still get everything done that I need to get done?
I had the experience with the internship that Professor Nielsen had set me up with, that I was able to work through the school year a little bit too, where a lot of the internships connections he has are alumni, right? So they know the life of a Kelvin engineering student, so they are a little more flexible. They might give you a special project to do, or be able to pick up some hours that help them out. So that's another thing. If it's if the internship ends up being a local one here in West Michigan, then you can, at least me as a business owner, I would more than happy to have Kelvin engineers come help me. So.
Okay, often when we have students who have an internship and then work for the company during the school year, then the company says during exam week, I don't want to see you. Okay, but over the holidays, you can work 40 hours. And so that works out kind of nice. One last question. One last question. Well, I'll just ask this then. Some of you mentioned you did some international things. Would you like to say a little bit about your international experiences here?
Yeah, so the summer after my freshman year, I went on the Calvin Engineering Germany summer trip. And that was by far one of the greatest experiences of my life. Not only just being in another country and getting to experience the culture there, but also just the friendships I formed while on that trip with the other engineers. That has helped so much in my classes right now, because I have like 4 or 5 other kids that went on the trip in my classes, and we just get together every night, work on homework, and it's just really nice, like, having that in common to like talk about and remember and just laugh about, and also to like get work done. And so yeah, that experience I would definitely recommend.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. But I'll share a little bit if you guys have never heard of what goes on there. But every week you go through classes, typically early in the morning through 3 or 4-ish, and then afternoons and evenings you go back to a place where we're living, and you work together with everyone there just to go through the homework. So you really do create relationships, great relationships. You bond with other students, and over the weekends, 3-day weekends especially, you get to travel, go across different parts of Germany, and really see a lot of the history and the culture there. So it really is an incredible opportunity. The last week you get to travel to wherever you want with a group of people. My family went over there with me, so we got to travel to a couple different areas, but typically most people will get a group of students, typically around 4, maybe a little more, and they'll go to a couple different places of their own, getting their own, so they're all responsible for it. So you're getting your own train tickets, you're getting maybe a flight if you're going far, you're responsible for that entire week, and then you have to be back at a certain time. So it is cool to see you are responsible entirely. I mean, I was 19 when I went on it, yeah. So being 19-year-old on your own in another country, I mean, incredible opportunity, but you really have to watch out. So you have to be careful and know where you're at and stuff.
So I have one regret about my time here at Calvin, and that was that I never went overseas. But my son-in-law did, and he went to Korea, and he went for an interim, I believe it was. So it's just about a 3-week trip, and they got to talk with CEOs of Samsung and other places there, and meet a lot of very impressive and cool folks, and see a lot of cool factories and plants, and kind of get his eyes opened up, to what manufacturing is like and what engineering is like in another part of the world. But also then the food too, right? That's something I just got picture after picture of all the food that he was trying, and it opened his eyes. He came back and was in love with the kimchi, and oh my gosh, so that was certainly neat too.
Well, okay, that'll conclude this part of the program. Let's give our panel a hand.